The alarm screamed across the bridge of the warship Liberty as Captain Jake Morrison watched Earth burn through the main view screen. The blue planet that had been humanity's home for millions of years was now covered in orange flames and black smoke. Zephyrian ships moved across the surface like hungry vultures, their energy weapons turning cities into glass and ash. "Captain, we have incoming transmissions from the evacuation fleet," said Commander Lisa Hayes from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could see the pain in her eyes. They were all watching their world die, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Jake pressed the communication button on his command chair. "This is Captain Morrison. All ships report status." The responses came one after another. Transport ships packed with civilians, cargo vessels loaded with supplies, and the remaining warships of Earth's defense fleet. 57 military vessels and 300 civilian ships. It was all that remained of humanity's once mighty space force. "Admiral Cooper is requesting immediate conference," Lisa said. "The Zephyrians are moving to cut off our escape routes." Jake nodded grimly. Admiral Frank Cooper was the man who had made the hardest decision any human leader had ever faced. 3 hours ago, he had given the order to abandon Earth. The planet was lost and continuing to fight would only mean the complete extinction of the human race. The holographic image of Admiral Cooper appeared on the bridge. The old man looked like he had aged 10 years in the past week. His gray hair was disheveled and his uniform was stained with sweat and blood from the fighting. "Jake, how long until the civilian transports are ready for hyperspace jump?" Cooper asked. "Engineering reports 15 minutes, sir. The damage from the last attack slowed down our preparations. We don't have 15 minutes. Long-range sensors show 3 Zephyrian battle groups moving to intercept us. We need to leave now or we'll never leave at all." Jake felt his stomach drop. The civilian ships were packed beyond capacity with refugees. Men, women, and children who had lost everything and now faced the possibility of dying in the cold emptiness of space. He thought about the families aboard those ships, people who had trusted their military to keep them safe. "Sir, if we jump now, some of the civilian ships might not make it. Their hyperspace drives are still charging." Cooper's face hardened. "Captain, I'm ordering you to prepare for immediate departure. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. We can't save everyone, but we can save most of them." Before Jake could respond, Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner spoke up from the navigation station. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the Zephyrian ships. They're charging their main weapons." On the view screen, the alien vessels began to glow with a sickly green light. Jake had seen that light before during the defense of Luna Station. When those weapons fired, nothing human-made could survive their blast. "All ships, this is Admiral Cooper. Execute emergency hyperspace jump in 60 seconds. Repeat, emergency jump in 60 seconds. The bridge erupted in controlled chaos as the crew prepared for the jump. Jake watched the civilian ships on his tactical display, knowing that some of them would be left behind. The weight of those lives pressed down on him like a physical force. 30 seconds to jump, Alex called out through the communication system. Jake could hear the panicked voices of civilian ship captains. Some were begging for more time, others were reporting critical failures in their hyperspace systems. The sounds of human fear and desperation filled the bridge. 10 seconds, Alex announced. Jake gripped his command chair as the hyperspace engines activated. The stars outside shifted and twisted as reality bent around them. The last thing he saw before Earth disappeared forever was a massive Zephyrian weapon blast striking the planet's surface. The impact was so powerful that it cracked the planet's crust and sent molten rock spraying into space. When the hyperspace jump ended, they found themselves in an empty region of space far from any known star system. Jake immediately ordered a fleet count. Of the 300 civilian ships that had attempted the jump, only 273 had made it. 27 ships full of innocent people had been lost in the transition. "Admiral, we're receiving distress signals from damaged civilian vessels," Lisa reported. "Multiple ships are reporting life support failures and hull breaches." Cooper appeared on the main screen again. His face was grim but determined. Deploy all available rescue ships. We save who we can and we keep moving. The Zephyrians will be tracking our hyperspace signature. Jake stood up from his command chair and walked to the view screen. In the distance, he could see the running lights of the refugee fleet. Hundreds of ships carrying nearly 2 million human souls. They were all that remained of Earth's children. Where do we go now, sir? Jake asked. Cooper was quiet for a long moment before answering. There's an unexplored system about 50 light-years from here. Long-range probes detected some interesting readings, but no immediate threats. We'll make our temporary base there. While we figure out our next move, Jake nodded. They had survived the fall of Earth, but their fight was far from over. Somewhere in the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire continued its conquest of human colonies. Billions of people were counting on this small fleet to somehow find a way to fight back against an enemy that had destroyed the most powerful civilization in human history. As the fleet prepared for another jump, Jake made a silent promise to himself and to the memory of Earth. Humanity would not go quietly into extinction. They would find a way to strike back, no matter how long it took or how impossible it seemed. The Zephyrians had won the first battle, but the war was far from over. The refugee fleet emerged from hyperspace near a red dwarf star that had never been given a proper name. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner checked his navigation systems twice before confirming their location. They had traveled 53 light-years from Earth and were now in completely uncharted territory. Admiral, long-range sensors are picking up something unusual. Alex reported from his station on the Liberty's bridge. There's a large artificial structure on the fourth planet. It's definitely not natural. Admiral Cooper studied the sensor readings with growing interest. The structure was massive, easily the size of a major city, and appeared to be built directly into the planet's surface. Most importantly, it was completely dark. No energy signatures, no life signs, nothing to indicate it was still active. Could it be Zephyrian? Asked Captain Jake Morrison. No, sir, replied Commander Rick Martinez from the intelligence station. The construction patterns are completely different. This is something else entirely. Dr. Kate Sullivan, the fleet's lead scientist, was brought to the bridge to examine the readings. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had spent most of her career studying alien artifacts. Her face lit up with excitement as she reviewed the data. This is incredible, she said. The materials are unknown to us, but the power readings suggest technology far beyond anything we've seen. Even more advanced than the Zephyrians? Cooper made his decision quickly. We'll establish a temporary base in the asteroid belt and send a small team to investigate. Dr. Sullivan, I want you to lead the expedition. Take a full science team and a squad of Marines for protection. 2 days later, the research vessel Explorer approached the mysterious planet. The world was barren and lifeless, with a thin atmosphere and no signs of vegetation. The alien structure dominated the northern continent, its dark metal surfaces reflecting the dim light of the red sun. Dr. Sullivan stood on the Explorer's bridge as they descended toward the structure. I'm reading massive underground chambers, she told Captain Morrison, who had insisted on leading the mission personally. This thing goes down at least 5 kilometers below the surface. The landing was smooth and the team quickly established a base camp near what appeared to be the main entrance. The structure was even more impressive up close. Smooth walls of unknown metal stretched up toward the sky, covered in symbols that looked like nothing in human databases. Dr. Sullivan, you need to see this, called out Marine Sergeant Bob Taylor from near the entrance. The large doorway had opened as they approached, revealing a corridor that stretched into darkness. The team moved carefully through the entrance, their lights revealing walls covered in more of the strange symbols. The corridor led to a vast chamber filled with what could only be described as computer terminals. Thousands of them, all dark and silent. The air is breathable, reported Marine Corporal Linda Grant, checking her scanner. Gravity is slightly less than Earth normal. No immediate dangers detected. Dr. Sullivan approached one of the terminals and was surprised when it activated at her touch. Symbols flowed across the screen in patterns that seemed almost familiar. She worked for hours, trying to make sense of the alien language while her team explored the rest of the facility. "Kate, you need to come down here," came Captain Morrison's voice over the radio. "We found something big." The team had discovered a massive chamber deep underground. The walls were covered in what appeared to be star charts showing the entire galaxy. Thousands of systems were marked with the same symbols they had seen throughout the facility. "Look at this," said Dr. Sullivan, pointing to a section of the map. "These symbols appear over and over again, always in systems that we know were conquered by the Zephyrians." Commander Martinez, who had joined the surface team, studied the patterns. "It's like they were tracking the Zephyrian expansion. But this facility looks ancient. How could they have known?" The answer came when Dr. Sullivan managed to partially decode one of the main computer systems. The symbols began to make sense, and slowly a picture emerged of the facility's builders. They called themselves the Ancients, and they had fought a war against the Zephyrians thousands of years ago. "The records are incomplete," Dr. Sullivan explained to the team, "but it's clear that the Ancients were losing. The Zephyrians had superior numbers and were consuming entire civilizations. The final entries talk about a last desperate plan. The plan was remarkable in its scope. The Ancients had hidden facilities like this, one throughout the galaxy, each containing advanced technology and weapons. They had designed them to remain dormant until activated by a species capable of using them against the Zephyrians." "Why didn't they use these weapons themselves?" asked Morrison. Dr. Sullivan pointed to another section of the records. "They did try, but the Zephyrians adapted too quickly. The Ancients realized that their technology alone wasn't enough. They needed something the Zephyrians couldn't adapt to." The records showed that the Ancients had studied dozens of species throughout the galaxy. They were looking for something specific, something that would give a future civilization an advantage against the Zephyrian Empire. They had found it in the outer rim of the galaxy in a small yellow star system. "They were watching Earth," Dr. Sullivan said quietly. "They knew about humanity long before we developed space travel. They were waiting for us to grow strong enough to use their weapons." The implications were staggering. Humanity had not stumbled onto this facility by accident. The Ancients had planned for this moment, had prepared for the day when humans would need their help to fight the Zephyrians. Commander Martinez found the weapons cache 3 levels down. Devices that defied human understanding but somehow felt familiar when touched. Energy weapons that could punch through Zephyrian armor, shield generators that could protect entire ships, and power sources that made fusion reactors look like campfires. "There's more," Dr. Sullivan reported as she decoded additional records. "This is just one facility. There are dozens of others hidden throughout the galaxy. Each one contains different technologies, different weapons. Together, they form a network that could potentially defeat the Zephyrian Empire." Captain Morrison contacted Admiral Cooper immediately. "Sir, we need to bring the entire fleet down here. This changes everything." As the refugee fleet began to relocate to the ancient facility, Dr. Sullivan made one final discovery. Hidden in the deepest part of the computer system was a message left by the Ancients. It was addressed to the humans they had never met but had always believed would come. The message was simple but powerful. "You have suffered as we suffered. You have lost as we lost. But you have something we never had. You have the will to never surrender. Use our gifts wisely and take back what was stolen from you." For the first time since fleeing Earth, Jake Morrison felt something other than despair. Hidden in an ancient alien facility, humanity had found hope. The Zephyrians had made one crucial mistake. They had not destroyed humanity completely, and now the survivors had access to weapons that could level the playing field. The war was far from over, but for the first time, humans had a chance to win. 6 months had passed since the refugee fleet discovered the ancient facility on the barren world they now called Haven. The planet had transformed from a dead rock into humanity's new home. with underground cities carved from the facility's vast chambers. Chief Engineer Amy Johnson stood in the main engineering bay, watching her teams work on the most ambitious project in human history. The warship Liberty floated in the facility's massive underground hangar, its hull torn open to reveal the modifications taking place inside. Ancient technology was being carefully integrated with human systems, creating something that had never existed before. The ship's old fusion reactors had been replaced with power cores that hummed with energy patterns no human truly understood. "The power output is incredible," Amy reported to Captain Jake Morrison as he toured the construction site. "These ancient reactors produce 50 times more energy than our best fusion plants. We're having to completely redesign the ship's systems to handle the load." Jake nodded as he examined the work. The Liberty was no longer recognizable as the warship that had fled Earth. Ancient armor plating covered the hull, providing protection that could withstand direct hits from Zephyrian weapons. The ship's bridge had been expanded to accommodate new control systems that responded to human thoughts as much as touch. "How long until she's ready for combat trials?" Jake asked. 2 more weeks for the Liberty," Amy replied. "The other ships will take longer. We're learning as we go, and each vessel requires different modifications." Across the facility, Colonel Patricia White was training the first generation of human soldiers to use ancient weapons and armor. The equipment was unlike anything humans had ever created, responding to the user's intentions rather than simple commands. The armor seemed to know what the wearer needed before they did. "The key is not to fight the technology," Patricia explained to her newest class of recruits. "The ancient gear reads your mind and body. If you're afraid or uncertain, it won't work properly. You have to be completely confident in your abilities." Marine Sergeant Bob Taylor raised his hand. "Colonel, what if we're not confident? What if we're scared?" Patricia smiled grimly. "Then you think about Earth burning and you remember why we're here. Fear is natural, but it can't control you. The Zephyrians destroyed our world because they thought we were weak. It's time to prove them wrong." The training exercises were impressive to watch. Soldiers wearing ancient armor could leap 30 feet in a single bound and lift objects that weighed several tons. The weapons fired energy beams that could cut through steel like paper. Most importantly, the technology seemed to enhance human abilities rather than replace them. Dr. Kate Sullivan had made breakthrough after breakthrough in understanding ancient science. The facility's computers contained thousands of years of research and development, all of it focused on fighting the Zephyrian Empire. She worked day and night, translating technical manuals and weapon specifications. "The ancients were brilliant," she told Admiral Cooper during one of their regular briefings. "They understood that the Zephyrians adapt to any direct threat. So they created technology that changes and evolves during combat. Every time the Zephyrians develop a countermeasure, the ancient weapons automatically develop a countermeasure." Cooper studied the reports she had prepared. "What about the civilian population? Are they adapting to life here?" Director Helen Kim had been working tirelessly to establish living conditions for the nearly 2 million refugees now calling Haven home. The ancient facility was massive, but it required careful planning to house so many people. Families were living in converted storage chambers while children played in corridors that had been silent for millennia. "The people are resilient," Helen reported. "We've established schools, medical facilities, and even recreational areas. The ancient systems provide everything we need: clean air, fresh water, and food production. It's not Earth, but it's home." The most remarkable discovery was that children seemed to adapt to ancient technology faster than adults. 10-year-old Danny Cooper, the Admiral's grandson, could operate ancient computers with an ease that amazed the scientists. The boy had lost his parents during the evacuation from Earth, but had found purpose in helping the research teams. "The symbols make sense to me," Danny explained to Dr. Sullivan during one of their sessions. "It's like the computers are talking directly to my brain. They want to help us fight the bad aliens." Commander Rick Martinez had been busy establishing intelligence networks throughout the galaxy. The ancient facility's communication systems could reach across vast distances, allowing contact with human resistance groups that had been isolated since the fall of Earth. "We're getting reports from 12 different star systems," Rick told the command staff. "Human colonies that survived the initial attack are organizing resistance movements. They're waiting for a signal from us." The reports were both encouraging and heartbreaking. Millions of humans were trapped on occupied worlds, forced to work in Zephyrian mining operations or research facilities. The aliens were studying human biology and technology, trying to understand what made Earth's defenders so difficult to defeat. "They're afraid of us," Jake realized as he read the intelligence reports. "The Zephyrians have conquered hundreds of species, but none of them fought back the way humans did. They're trying to figure out what makes us different." Admiral Cooper called a meeting of the senior staff to discuss their next move. The fleet now consisted of 37 upgraded warships, each one more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. The remaining civilian vessels had been converted into support ships, carrying supplies and equipment for extended operations. "We have two choices," Cooper told the assembled officers. "We can continue building our strength here in secret, or we can announce our presence to the galaxy. The Zephyrians think humanity is extinct. That gives us an advantage, but only if we use it soon." Captain Steve Davis, who now commanded a squadron of fighters built with ancient technology, spoke up. "Sir, what about the human prisoners? Every day we wait, more of our people die in Zephyrian camps." The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. They had the power to strike back against the Zephyrians, but any attack would reveal their location and bring the full might of the alien empire down on Haven. Jake stood up from his chair. "I volunteer to lead the first strike mission. We pick a target that will send a message but won't reveal our main base. Show the galaxy that humanity is still fighting." Amy Johnson nodded in agreement. "The Liberty is ready for combat. Her systems are fully integrated and we've tested everything multiple times. She's stronger than any ship in the old Earth fleet." Cooper looked around the room at the faces of his officers. These were the survivors of humanity's greatest defeat. But they had become something more. They were the inheritors of ancient wisdom and the carriers of human determination. "Very well," Cooper said finally. "We'll plan a rescue mission to one of the prisoner camps. Something that will free our people and announce to the galaxy that humanity is not dead. It's time the Zephyrians learned that they made a mistake when they attacked Earth." The meeting broke up with everyone returning to their duties. The transformation of the human fleet was nearly complete, and soon they would take the fight to their enemies. The refugees who had fled Earth in desperation were about to become the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The upgraded warship Liberty dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, her new ancient sensors immediately scanning for Zephyrian patrol ships. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display as it revealed the enemy positions around the mining world where 10,000 human prisoners were being worked to death. "Stealth systems are holding," reported Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner from his navigation station. "The Zephyrians show no signs of detecting us." Jake nodded grimly. The ancient stealth technology was beyond anything humans had imagined possible. The Liberty was completely invisible to Zephyrian sensors, allowing them to approach undetected. Behind them, 15 more upgraded human warships waited in hyperspace, ready to join the attack on his signal. Commander Lisa Hayes studied the intelligence reports from the planet below. The prison camp is located in the northern mining complex. Satellite images show guard towers and energy barriers around the perimeter. The prisoners are being forced to extract rare minerals from underground caves. The sight of human slaves working under alien masters filled Jake with cold rage. These were civilians who had been captured during the fall of the outer colonies, men and women who had done nothing wrong except be born human. The Zephyrians worked them 18 hours a day with barely enough food to survive. Target assessment complete, announced Commander Rick Martinez from the intelligence station. 3 orbital defense platforms, 2 heavy cruisers, and approximately 50 smaller patrol craft. Ground forces consist of about 2,000 Zephyrian soldiers and automated defense systems. Jake activated the communication system. All ships, this is Liberty Actual, execute attack plan Alpha in 60 seconds. Remember, we're here to save our people and send a message. Make every shot count. The first phase of the attack began when Captain Steve Davis led his squadron of ancient tech fighters against the orbital defense platforms. The small ships moved like ghosts through space, their energy weapons cutting through Zephyrian shields as if they were made of paper. The platforms exploded in brilliant flashes of light before their crews could even send a distress signal. Platforms eliminated, Davis reported. Beginning attack on enemy cruisers. Zephyrian warships were massive vessels, each one larger than any human ship ever built. Their hulls were covered in weapon batteries and their shields could deflect most known forms of energy. But the ancient weapons were not like anything the aliens had encountered before. Jake watched with satisfaction as the Liberty's main guns fired for the first time in combat. The energy beams punched through the cruiser's shields and armor, causing secondary explosions that ripped the ship apart from the inside. The second cruiser lasted only minutes longer before it too was destroyed. All orbital defenses eliminated, Lisa reported. Beginning ground assault. Lieutenant Colonel Ben Thompson led the Marine Assault Force in their ancient-powered armor. The soldiers dropped from orbit in armored pods, their equipment protecting them from the intense heat of atmospheric entry. They landed like falling stars around the prison camp, their weapons already charging for battle. The Zephyrian ground forces were caught completely by surprise. They had grown accustomed to their technological superiority and had never faced an enemy that could match their weapons. The human Marines moved through their defensive positions like avenging angels, their armor deflecting alien energy blasts while their weapons cut down the guards. Perimeter secured, Thompson reported over the radio. Moving to free the prisoners. Jake monitored the battle from orbit, ready to provide orbital bombardment if needed. The ancient weapon systems made the Liberty more powerful than an entire fleet of old Earth battleships. Her energy cannons could level city blocks and her shields could withstand direct hits from planet-killing weapons. The rescue operation moved quickly. The human prisoners, weak from months of slave labor, were loaded onto evacuation ships while the Marines destroyed the mining equipment and processing facilities. The Zephyrians had invested heavily in this operation and losing it would hurt their expansion plans. 8,000 prisoners recovered, Thompson reported. The others died during the imprisonment. We're destroying the remaining facilities now. Jake felt a mixture of joy and rage. They had saved 8,000 lives, but 2,000 humans had died in Zephyrian custody. The aliens would pay for every lost life, but for now the mission was about rescue and sending a message. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump, Jake ordered. We're done here. The human fleet disappeared into hyperspace just as Zephyrian reinforcements arrived in the system. The aliens found nothing but wreckage and the smoking ruins of their mining operation. More importantly, they found a message burned into the surface of the planet in letters 3 kilometers high. Humanity lives. The rescue operation was a complete success, but it had consequences that reached far beyond the Kepler 442 system. Within hours, news of the attack spread throughout the Zephyrian Empire. The aliens had believed humanity was extinct, but now they knew better. Somewhere in the galaxy, humans were not only alive but fighting back with weapons that could challenge Zephyrian technology. Fleet Admiral Zarthok, the supreme commander of the Zephyrian military, studied the battle reports with growing concern. His species had conquered hundreds of worlds and enslaved dozens of civilizations, but none had ever mounted such an effective counterattack. The weapons used by the human ships were unlike anything in the Zephyrian databases. How is this possible? Zarthok demanded of his intelligence officers. Our reports confirmed that Earth was completely destroyed. The human fleet was scattered and their colonies were occupied. Where did they get these weapons? The intelligence reports were disturbing. The human ships had appeared without warning. destroyed superior forces with ease and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Their weapons penetrated Zephyrian shields and their armor deflected the Empire's most powerful energy blasts. "Sir, there are reports of similar attacks in 3 other systems," reported Subcommander Veltar. "Human resistance groups are becoming more active. They seem to be coordinating their efforts." Zarthok's mandibles clicked with irritation. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years through superior technology and ruthless efficiency. No species had ever successfully resisted their expansion for long. But the humans were different, and that difference was proving to be a serious problem. "Deploy hunting fleets to search for the human base," Zarthok ordered. "I want every system. Within 100 light-years of the attack, search thoroughly. The humans are hiding somewhere, and when we find them, we'll finish what we started at Earth." Back on Haven, the rescued prisoners were being treated in the medical facilities deep within the ancient complex. Dr. Kate Sullivan worked with the medical teams to help the survivors recover from their ordeal. Many of them had been tortured or experimented on by their Zephyrian captors, but they were alive and free. "The psychological trauma will take time to heal," Dr. Sullivan reported to Admiral Cooper. "But they're strong. They survived months in alien prison camps and they're eager to join the fight." Cooper nodded as he reviewed the mission reports. The first strike had exceeded all expectations, but he knew it was only the beginning. The Zephyrians would respond with overwhelming force, and humanity needed to be ready for the war that was coming. "The galaxy knows we're alive," Cooper told his staff. "Now we need to show them that we're not just survivors, we're liberators. Every human under alien rule is counting on us to free them." Captain Morrison stood before the assembled crews of the strike fleet, addressing the men and women who had just won humanity's first victory since the fall of Earth. Their faces showed pride and determination, but also the weight of responsibility that came with their newfound power. "Today we proved that humanity cannot be destroyed," Jake told them. "The Zephyrians thought they had won, but they were wrong. We are the children of Earth, and we will not surrender. We will not hide. We will fight until every human is free, and every world is liberated." The cheers that followed could be heard throughout the ancient facility. Humanity had struck back, and the galaxy would never be the same. The news of the Kepler 442 rescue spread across the galaxy like wildfire, carried by hidden communication networks that the Zephyrians could not monitor. On dozens of occupied worlds, human resistance fighters heard the impossible message: humanity was alive and fighting back with weapons that could defeat their alien oppressors. "Captain Sarah." Mitchell stood on the bridge of the reconnaissance vessel Silent Runner as it approached the Arcturus system, where intelligence reports indicated a major resistance cell was hiding in the asteroid belt. Her ship was one of the newest additions to the human fleet, built entirely with ancient technology and capable of traveling undetected through enemy territory. "Contact established with the resistance leader," reported Communications Officer Matt Wilson. "They're calling themselves the Free Arcturus Coalition, and they claim to have over 5,000 fighters ready for action." Sarah nodded as she reviewed the tactical data. The Arcturus system had been one of humanity's most prosperous colonies before the Zephyrian invasion. The aliens had turned it into a massive industrial complex, forcing the surviving humans to build weapons and ships for the Empire's continued expansion. "Put me through to their leader," Sarah ordered. The face that appeared on the main screen belonged to a weathered man with scars across his forehead and determination in his eyes. Commander Pete Adams had been fighting the Zephyrians for 3 years with nothing but salvaged weapons and desperate courage. "I can't believe it's true," Pete said, his voice filled with emotion. "We heard the reports, but we thought it was just wishful thinking. You really have ships that can fight the aliens?" "More than that," Sarah replied. "We have weapons that can win. Admiral Cooper wants to coordinate all resistance movements into a unified force. Are you willing to work with us?" Pete's answer was immediate. "Lady, we've been waiting for this moment since the invasion began. Tell us what you need." Similar conversations were taking place across the galaxy as human ships, made contact with resistance groups that had been isolated for years. Each cell had its own story of survival and defiance, but they all shared the same burning desire for freedom and revenge against their oppressors. Back on Haven, Dr. Kate Sullivan was making the most important discovery of her career. Deep within the ancient computer systems, she had found references to something called the Convergence Protocol. The files were heavily encrypted and required weeks of careful translation work. "It's a weapon system unlike anything we've seen," she explained to Admiral Cooper during an emergency briefing. The ancients built it as their final gambit against the Zephyrians. It's designed to disrupt the Empire's faster-than-light communication network. Cooper studied the technical diagrams. With growing excitement, what would that accomplish? The Zephyrian Empire is held together by instantaneous communication between their homeworld and thousands of occupied systems, Dr. Sullivan continued. Their entire military strategy depends on coordinated movements across vast distances. If we could disrupt that network, their fleets would be scattered and vulnerable. The implications were staggering. The Zephyrian Empire controlled over 3,000 star systems through careful coordination of their military forces. Without their communication network, individual systems would be left to defend themselves against coordinated human attacks. What? Do we need to activate this protocol? Cooper asked. Dr. Sullivan's expression became serious. That's the problem. The system requires components from multiple ancient facilities scattered across the galaxy. We found references to at least 12 different sites, most of them deep in Zephyrian territory. Commander Rick Martinez, who had been quietly studying intelligence reports, looked up from his datapad. "Sir, we've been tracking Zephyrian fleet movements since the Kepler attack. They're deploying hunting groups throughout this sector, searching for our base. We don't have much time before they find us." The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Haven was humanity's only major stronghold, and if the Zephyrians discovered it, the war would be over before it truly began. They needed to act quickly, but the Convergence Protocol offered a chance to end the war decisively. "We're going to split our forces," Cooper decided. "Half the fleet will focus on gathering the components for the Convergence Protocol. The other half will coordinate with resistance movements to launch simultaneous attacks across the galaxy. We'll keep the Zephyrians so busy fighting fires that they won't have time to search for us." Captain Jake Morrison volunteered to lead the search for ancient facilities. The mission would be incredibly dangerous, requiring deep penetration into enemy territory and battles against overwhelming odds. But the potential rewards justified the risks. "The nearest facility is in the Vega system," Dr. Sullivan reported. "It's heavily defended, but our intelligence suggests it contains the main control matrix for the protocol." Meanwhile, Colonel Patricia White was training a new generation of human commandos for special operations behind enemy lines. The volunteers came from the rescued prisoners and the resistance fighters who had made their way to Haven. They were old veterans of the occupation who knew firsthand what the Zephyrians were capable of. "Your job is to cause as much chaos as possible," Patricia told her trainees. "Hit supply depots, communication centers, and military installations. Make the aliens think there are human armies on every world. The more resources they waste chasing shadows, the fewer ships they have to hunt for our main fleet." The training was intense and dangerous. The commandos learned to use ancient stealth technology and weapons that could level buildings. They practiced infiltration techniques and demolition tactics that would allow small teams to cripple major military installations. Young Danny Cooper, Admiral Cooper's grandson, had become an unofficial mascot for the resistance movement. At 12 years old, he understood ancient technology better than most adult scientists. His insights had helped crack several important computer systems and locate hidden weapon caches. "The computers are trying to tell us something," Danny explained to Dr. Sullivan during one of their sessions. "They keep showing me images of the Zephyrian homeworld. I think the ancients planned to attack it directly." Dr. Sullivan studied the images that Danny had retrieved from the ancient databases. The Zephyrian homeworld of Zephyr Prime was a fortress. world protected by hundreds of orbital defense platforms and patrolled by the Empire's most powerful fleets. It had never been successfully attacked in over 1,000 years of conquest. The ancients were planning something big, she realized. Not just disrupting communications, but a direct assault on the Empire's heart. The intelligence breakthrough came when Commander Martinez decoded a series of intercepted Zephyrian transmissions. The Empire's leadership was beginning to panic about the human attacks. Several military commanders had been executed for failing to stop the resistance movements, and resources were being diverted from expansion to internal security. "They're afraid," Martinez reported with satisfaction. "For the first time in their history, the Zephyrians are facing an enemy they can't simply overwhelm with superior numbers. Our hit-and-run tactics are forcing them to spread their forces thin." Admiral Cooper called a meeting of his senior staff to finalize plans for the next phase of the war. The human fleet had grown to over 200 ships, each one more powerful than anything the old Earth Navy had ever fielded. They had allies throughout the galaxy and access to weapons that could challenge the mightiest Zephyrian battleships. "We have a choice to make," Cooper told the assembled officers. "We can continue building our strength and fighting a slow war of attrition, or we can risk everything on a direct assault against the Empire's core systems. The Convergence Protocol gives us a chance to win quickly, but failure would mean the end of human resistance." Captain Morrison stood up from his chair. "Sir, with respect, we didn't flee Earth just to hide in the shadows. Every day we wait, more humans die in Zephyrian camps. I say we gather the components for the protocol and take the fight to their homeworld." The room erupted in agreement as officers voiced their support for the bold plan. They had all lost family and friends to the Zephyrian invasion, and the chance for decisive victory was, too, tempting to ignore. Cooper looked around the room at the faces of humanity's defenders. These men and women had witnessed the destruction of their civilization but had refused to surrender. They had transformed themselves from refugees into the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. "Very well," Cooper said finally. "We'll execute both plans simultaneously. Strike teams will gather the protocol components while the main fleet coordinates with resistance movements for a galaxy-wide uprising. When we're ready, we'll take the fight directly to Zephyr Prime and end this war once and for all." 3 years after fleeing Earth, the human fleet had grown into the most powerful force the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Frank Cooper stood on the bridge of the command ship New Horizon, watching as 200 warships prepared for the most ambitious military operation in history. Each vessel combined human engineering with ancient technology, creating weapons of war that the Zephyrian Empire had never imagined possible. "Final components secured from the Rigel facility," reported Captain Jake Morrison over the communication system. His strike team had fought through 3 days of brutal combat to retrieve the last piece needed for the Convergence Protocol. "We lost 8 ships, but the mission was successful." Cooper nodded grimly. The cost of gathering the protocol components had been high, with nearly 100 human ships destroyed and thousands of crew members killed. But they now possessed the means to cripple the Zephyrian Empire's communication network and strike at the heart of their power. Dr. Kate Sullivan worked frantically in the main laboratory, assembling the components into a device that defied human understanding. The ancient technology responded to her touch as if it had been waiting centuries for this moment. Young Danny Cooper, now 15 and taller than his grandfather, helped translate the final assembly instructions. "The protocol is ready," Dr. Sullivan announced. "Once activated, it will disrupt faster-than-light communications throughout Zephyrian space for approximately 6 hours. That's our window to attack their homeworld." The plan was audacious in its scope. While the main fleet assaulted Zephyr Prime, resistance movements throughout the galaxy would launch simultaneous uprisings on over 50 occupied worlds. The Zephyrians would be forced to fight on hundreds of fronts at once, preventing them from concentrating their forces for defense. Commander Rick Martinez had spent months coordinating with resistance leaders across the galaxy. "All cells are in position," he reported. They're waiting for our signal to begin the uprising. Once the protocol activates, they'll have 6 hours to cause as much damage as possible. Cooper studied the tactical displays showing Zephyr primes. Defenses. The alien homeworld was protected by orbital platforms that could destroy entire fleets, energy barriers that could deflect planet-killing weapons, and patrol forces larger than most civilizations' entire militaries. It had been the center of galactic conquest for over 1,000 years. Intelligence reports show the Overmind's control center is located deep underground, Commander Lisa Hayes added. If we can destroy it, the entire Zephyrian military structure will collapse. Their drone soldiers will be left without central command. The Overmind was the collective consciousness that controlled billions of Zephyrian warriors. It made tactical decisions at the speed of thought and coordinated military operations across thousands of star systems. Destroying it would leave the Empire's forces scattered and leaderless. Captain Steve Davis commanded the fighter squadrons that would lead the assault. His pilots flew ships built entirely with ancient technology, faster and more maneuverable than anything in space. They would punch through the orbital defenses while the main fleet engaged the Zephyrian battle groups. Remember, we only have 6 hours, Cooper addressed the fleet commanders. The protocol will give us the element of surprise, but once their communications come back online, every Zephyrian ship in the galaxy will come after us. We need to win this quickly or not at all. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving Haven behind for what might be the last time. If they failed, the Zephyrians would eventually find the ancient facility and destroy humanity's last stronghold. But if they succeeded, the galaxy would be free from alien tyranny for the first time in a millennium. They emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyr system, immediately activating the convergence protocol. Ancient energy surged through space, disrupting the quantum fields that allowed faster-than-light communication. Within seconds, the Zephyrian Empire was cut off from its central command. Protocol active, Dr. Sullivan reported. Communication disruption confirmed across all monitored frequencies. The effect was immediate and devastating. Zephyrian patrol ships began moving erratically as they lost contact with their commanders. Orbital defense platforms failed to coordinate their fire patterns. The Empire's greatest strength, their ability to act as one unified force, had been turned into their greatest weakness. All ships, attack Formation Alpha, Cooper ordered. Target the orbital platforms first, then concentrate on the surface installations. The battle for Zephyr Prime began with a fury that shook the foundations of space itself. Human ships fired ancient weapons that punched through alien shields like they were made of tissue paper. Zephyrian battleships, some of them larger than cities, exploded in brilliant flashes of light as their power cores overloaded. Captain Morrison led the assault on the primary orbital platform, a massive structure that had protected the homeworld for centuries. His ship, the Liberty, had been upgraded with the most powerful ancient weapons available. The platform's shields failed within minutes and its weapon batteries were silenced forever. Fighter squadrons swept through the orbital defenses like avenging angels. Captain Davis personally destroyed 3 heavy cruisers before leading his pilots toward the planet's surface. The Zephyrian air defenses tried to respond but without central coordination. Their efforts were chaotic and ineffective. Surface bombardment commencing, announced Colonel Patricia White from the assault ship Guardian. Her Marines would land once the orbital defenses were neutralized, fighting their way to the Overmind's control center through whatever ground forces remained. The battle raged for 3 hours before the orbital defenses finally collapsed. Hundreds of Zephyrian ships had been destroyed while the human fleet suffered only minor losses. The ancient technology proved superior to anything the Empire could field, just as the ancients had planned thousands of years ago. Landing force away, Patricia reported as her Marines descended toward the planet in armored assault pods. They carried ancient weapons and war armor that made them nearly invincible against conventional Zephyrian forces. The ground battle was fierce but brief. The Zephyrian defenders fought with desperate courage, but they were designed to function as part of a collective mind. Without the Overmind's guidance, they struggled to coordinate their resistance against the human assault. Control Center located, Patricia announced as her forces blasted through the final defensive barriers. Beginning demolition sequence. The ancient explosives that the Marines carried were designed specifically to destroy Zephyrian technology. When they detonated in the Overmind's core chamber, the explosion sent shockwaves through the quantum fields that connected every Zephyrian soldier in the galaxy. Overmind destroyed, Patricia reported. Repeat, the Overmind is destroyed. Across the galaxy, the effect was immediate. Zephyrian forces stopped fighting as their controlling intelligence died. Drone soldiers collapsed where they stood while their commanders struggled to understand what had happened. The empire that had ruled for 1,000 years ceased to exist in a single moment. Admiral Cooper stood on his bridge, watching as the last Zephyrian ships around Zephyr Prime powered down their weapons and surrendered. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy as resistance movements announced the liberation of their worlds. Humanity had not just survived the destruction of Earth, they had freed every enslaved species in the galaxy. Sir, we're receiving surrender transmissions from Zephyrian commanders throughout the system, Commander Hayes reported. They're requesting terms. Cooper thought about Earth burning, about the billions of humans who had died during the invasion, about the children who had grown up as slaves on alien worlds. The Zephyrians had shown no mercy when they held the advantage. Tell them we'll accept only unconditional surrender, Cooper replied. They'll be treated according to the same standards they showed their prisoners. Captain Morrison joined Cooper at the main view screen as they watched the alien homeworld. Fires burned across its surface where the control centers had been destroyed. But the planet itself remained intact. Unlike Earth, Zephyr Prime would survive its conquest. What happens now? Jake asked. Cooper smiled for the first time since leaving Earth. Now we go home, all of us? Every human in the galaxy is free to return to their worlds or find new ones. The ancients left us more than weapons. They left us the knowledge to rebuild everything we lost. As the human fleet prepared to return to Haven, messages began arriving from across the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved for generations were declaring their independence. The Zephyrian Empire was collapsing as its former subjects rose. Up against their weakened oppressors, young Danny Cooper stood beside his grandfather on the bridge, looking out at the stars that were no longer ruled by alien tyrants. Do you think the ancients would be proud of us? He asked. Admiral Cooper put his hand on the boy's shoulder. I think they knew exactly what we would do with their gifts. They chose well when they decided to help humanity. The war was over, but the work of rebuilding would take generations. Earth was gone, but humanity had found something better among the stars. They had found the strength to never surrender and the wisdom to help others find their freedom. The galaxy would never be the same.